Normally here, we talk pretty much exclusively about bourbon, but every once in a while, something else comes out that is worthy of addressing in the whiskey world. And today, we're going to Canada. That's right. Found North 2025 release of their Hell Diver. A little background on Found North Canadian Whisky. I know what you're thinking. Uh-oh, that stuff gets a little weird. It's okay. In this case, Found North created their High Altitude Collection, which had the 2024 release of Hell Diver, and I think also Hoverhawk, if I remember correct, is the other one. They recently had their raffle lottery. I entered for the first time. I've had a couple Found Norths, but it was the batch products in the past. And one of the things that's interesting because of the rules around Canadian whiskey is you tend to get much higher age statements, and that is absolutely the truth with this. Let's go over some details and then we'll get into tasting notes on this thing. It's a blend of 4 different whiskeys. There's a 24-year corn whiskey, a 20-year corn whiskey, a 17-year corn whiskey, and a 22-year rye whiskey. The ending mash bill results in 86% corn, 13% rye, and 1% malted barley, which is a slight change from last year. There was like 1 more rye and 1 less corn. Whatever. But here's where it really matters. In the High Altitude series, there's a bit of finishing going on. And in this case, it's a combination of New Oak, Pedro Jimenez Sherry, and ex-cognac casks that are used for the finishing. And the way that Found North does this is they will age the whiskey, do an initial blend, then take everything out for finishing. It finishes for a certain amount of time, and then they bring it back and re-blend those finished whiskeys together to create the final release. This is coming in at its cask strength, which is collectively 112.4 proof. So let's get into our 2-Minute Tuesday. To start with color, and you can see it's kind of an ambrish color, and one thing that's important to note here is that being Canadian whiskey, color additives are allowed, but Found North specifically states there are no additives for color, viscosity-wise. Hopefully you see that, but there's a few little legs coming in through nicely. Looks like it's reasonably oily. Let's get on the nose. Might have to give Canada a little less gruff. So you definitely can smell the sherry and cognac influence, but the predominant note here is not that. It is big and fruity. I mean like berry cobbler kind of thing. It's that mixed together kind of red fruit note. The oak is there, but it's just very light. You do get some like spice coming in, like cardamom. I love the fruit, and the definite like cognac sherry finish influences are coming. That's very, very sweet, very candy-like, very desserty. So it's probably going to be pretty amazing on the palate. Oh. So on the nose, we didn't really have any oak. On the palate, we definitely have oak. It is almost tannic, which is really interesting, but more in the way that, like, I would say wine has its tannins, less so than oak. The big fruit note is definitely there, but there's this undercurrent that's very, like, earthy. That throws me for a bit of a loop, because all the fruit and the sweet and the sherry and the cognac kind of helps bring that up. And this probably has to do with the way that this is aged. There is a very, like, streusely, graham cracker crusty thing kind of going on here. And I'm kind of down with that, because that accents the fruit notes and it brings them up. And that fruit is definitely there, but it's a touch of cherry, a bit of blackberry, and a lot of like strawberry and cranberry, oddly enough. There's this little slight tart thing, and maybe that's where that earthy note is coming in. There's definitely some like baking spice, and I would say cardamom definitely in the palate here. This is very interesting whiskey. Last little note I'm getting in here, there's a touch of fudgy chocolate. I really don't almost ever get that from whiskey. So what does that do for an overall score on the Found North here? The Hell Diver 2025. This is pretty good whiskey, and it takes me on a fairly complex ride. So in that regard, I'm going to give this an 83. I think this is a really solid bottle of whiskey, and considering it's Canadian whiskey and not the more typical bourbon profile, plus the finishing that is going on in there, it leads to a really interesting pour. And if you're trying to break away from, say, I almost always drink this as my daily sipper, and you want like a special occasion pour, maybe not like your anniversary or your birthday, but you want something where it's like, I got a promotion at work, I'm gonna have a couple nice pours. This might be the fun curveball to be in a flight to give you something way different than the standard bourbon profiles, but still a really lovely complex whiskey ride. And I think there's some big merit there. There is something in that dessert and very decadent, rich flavor profile coming in. That's very fruity, spicy, and oak, and that little tannic thing, and then it kind of shifts into that graham cracker, and then eventually finishes with a little bit of that kind of like fudgy brownie thing going on, which is a heck of a ride. So would I take this over the Joseph Magnus Murray Hill Club special release that I had toward the start of this year? No. I honestly think that is a significantly better bottle of whiskey for my palate. It might be different for your palate. Would I take this over like Jack Daniel's 14? Of course not, right? We're talking very different levels of whiskey, but if I'm going to look at something else that's in the Forgate, Rare Character, or some of these others where whiskey is like, 150-ish a bottle, and they do kind of several releases a year, and maybe they bring out a sort of special release or a different edition, kind of how they have the High Altitude series here for Found North, that's where I would be really interested to take this over those. Because those are all great bourbons. Do not get me wrong, right? I don't want to throw shade and be like, they suck. I think they're a little overpriced, but I still think they're very good. This takes you on a different ride. And sometimes I feel like having that different ride in your selection is more important than having necessarily like this super high quality blended product, because you probably already have a bunch of super high quality blended products. Let's be honest. So that's it. That's our 2 Minute Tuesday on Found North's 2025 Helldiver release out of the High Altitude collection. Have you had an opportunity to try Found North? What have been your thoughts? I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Is there something that has made you go, I'm not interested in that Found North stuff at all. I don't need no Canadian whiskey. I also want to hear that from you, so let me know in the comments down below. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing, because that's one of the best ways to tell old Papa YouTube, hey, I like this, and someone else might too. It's free, and it's the best way to help small whiskey tube channels like mine grow. When we hit 500 subscribers, I'm going to give away a sample flight of a bunch of amazing whiskey. I'm going to guarantee one of those flights has this in it, because I think this is interesting, and I want someone else to get a chance to try this too. And when we hit 1,000 subscribers, I'm going to give away a bottle of E.H. Taylor Single Barrel and probably a little bit else. As always, my friends, thank you so much for watching, and stay awesome.